everyone, it's Katie, and I cannot wait to see you all in Milwaukee for the Midwest Arts Expo in just a few short days. While you're there, stop by booth 511 in the expo hall, throw on a pair of headphones, and talk to us about your industry hot takes, the things you think we're not talking enough about as an industry, or those things that are keeping you up at night. You know we all have them. We want to hear your perspective. Also stop by the bar where it happens, our bar at the conference, for a chat and a drink. You know it's going to be a good time. Safe travels, everyone, and we'll see you in Milwaukee.
Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Hey everybody, welcome back to There's No Business Like. I'm Bryan Zelmer from Bardavon Presents. I'm coming to you today from Kingston, New York, and I'm here with my friends, Danielle.
Hey, it's Danielle Van Hook from the Alden in McLean, Virginia.
And Josh.
Josh Benson, coming to you from Marion, Illinois at the Marion Cultural and Civic Center.
And Katie.
Hi there, everyone. Katie Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates in Midland, Michigan.
So Kevin can't be with us today because his family's visiting and they're going to be doing some sports balling activities. So it's just the four of us today. But as I pondered my professional journey to where I am today and thinking about when I first started in a senior management role, the training that I got in college kind of gave me the foundation of understanding what I needed to do, but I didn't learn really the how-to until I was on the job. And I was curious if any of you have a similar experience.
Oh, I would say for certain, Bryan, like I went to school for political science, communications, and theater studies. And I did a lot of technical training with the theater studies department. So acting and technical theater. So I learned how to focus lights and property design and do some production management, stage management, that sort of thing. But like when I became the managing director of the Playhouse at White Lake, like I had never taken an arts administration class. That was not a thing that was offered as a part of my program. So I call that my like master's degree in arts administration because I literally learned everything on the job. I had to figure out every single aspect of what it took to run a theater, of a facility, right? So I knew programming, I knew a little bit of like the artistic stuff, but how to run a facility, that was not something that was on my bingo card for being 23. And so I really learned all of that on the job, taught it mostly to myself. I had some great mentors along the way, but yeah, I was hanging and focusing lights. I was running a soundboard. I was production managing everything. I was fixing toilets by myself. I was, coming up with marketing campaigns and all of that. So that was really my on the job training and what set me up for success for everything that came after.
Yeah, and my degree is in arts management. And I think that I learned so much about the marketing side of performance, the running of a performance, like the artist interactions. And I took a lot of classes that were sort of like outside the theater department that were in business and accounting and communications and things like that. But the thing that, and my colleague says this a lot too, is like that we do a lot more math than we had anticipated. And I will say like accounting and budgeting, and this is not like groundbreaking information, deeply different things. I don't think that I've ever like done accounting, at least like 101 intro accounting, but like budgeting and more like basic math, like how does the spreadsheet work is like a very different skill set of which I learned like on the job. And it's an area that's been a surprise, but it's one of the areas that I think because math is that's not why I got into theater. It's not my strong suit. I think I've gotten pretty good at it because I knew it was such a thing that I just don't intrinsically understand or like had an interest in doing prior to finding out that I have a math job.
I'm a college dropout and didn't really have any training.
You went to college though.
I mean, yeah, I did 1 year at SIU Carbondale for theater. For me, I'm just scrappy. And so, I mean, for me, everything was on-job training, whether it was in this job or other jobs, which are far too many to list. But it's really just paying attention to what's around you, what is needed, and how you need to get there. Figuring out what you need to do and how you need to do things to get there and to get things accomplished and to move forward. So, I mean, that's why I'm saying it's really all about being scrappy and and working on your feet.
Yeah. I mean, my story is similar to all of yours. As I alluded to in the beginning, just I was going to school and my track was to try to be a performer. That was what I wanted to do. And I had to take classes in backstage work. And I remember taking a lighting class and a sound class. And I did enough to get a good grade in the class, but I really wasn't intentionally trying to retain it because I thought, oh, I'll never use this. But I did, of course. And in my first role as an executive director when I was at Sussex County Community College, I had my first professional dance company coming through, Aspen Santa Fe Ballet, and they sent me a light plot and I had to hang and focus and everything. And I was like, oh no, I vaguely remember some of this, but I had to learn quick or relearn quick on the job. And that was a big eye-opening experience. Like, no, I should be paying attention and using every opportunity I have to learn things because you never know when you're going to need it.
It's true.
I bring this up because I was thinking about my trajectory of learning and professional growth after talking with Trish Santini and Frank Butler from the Empire Training Center for the Arts, a new program that's opened up in Poughkeepsie, New York. So take a listen to this and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Hi, I'm Trish Santini. I'm one of the co-founders of Empire Training Center for the Arts.
And I'm Frank Butler, also co-founder, Empire Training Center for the Arts.
So great to have you with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the Empire Training Center for the Arts is?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. We're a new vocational training center. We're located at the Chance Theater in the city of Poughkeepsie, right on Main Street. And we train for technical and administrative jobs in the performing arts and live entertainment. So on the technical side, we train stagehands, audio, and video technicians. And in the coming months, we'll be adding the administrative track, training in company management, fundraising, and communications.
Wow, that sounds amazing, and I can't wait to get into learning more about that. But first, I want to know more about both of you and your career. I looked at both of your bios, and you both have an incredible wealth of different experiences in the industry. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start, actually, if you could each take turns, maybe just telling us first how you got the bug, if you will, the spark that kind of said, this is what I want to do. And just like, obviously, we don't have time for the whole story, but just the highlights, the key moments along the way.
When I was in high school, I was in a rock band, not a very good one, but I found that as things went along, I was more interested in the equipment than I was actually performing in front of people, and it's not a big leap since I'm an introvert. So I went to college for that, then sort of got interested in lighting design and went and got a master's in lighting design. Started working in the field and quickly determined that I did not want the itinerant lifestyle of a lighting designer. So I switched to production management, and I'm about 40 years into regional theater production management. I started out at the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge on the Harvard campus during Bob Brewstein's tenure, and then went to Joe Dowling's Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis and was there for 18 years. During those 35 to 40 years, I experienced an enormous amount of privilege, a lot of promotions that happened or opportunities to even have an internship where not everyone is afforded those kinds of opportunities. At this juncture in my career, I don't know that I necessarily need to production manage another production of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. I've done it several times. Don't need to do it again. So turned my attention to giving back to the institution, especially the nonprofit realm, but the institution that has taken care of me so well. So if I've got 40 years under my belt, I've got 40 years of mistakes I can point out to other people to prevent them from making the same ones I made. So our attempt on my side, on the technical side, is to really leverage the connections that I have and leverage the experience that I have to give people in an intensive vocational atmosphere a leg up and the kind of opportunities to be trained in a highly technical way to become a professional in the technical realm in live entertainment.
My spark was really young. My mom is a dance teacher and choreographer, so I was in her studio from like toddler. I started training with her when I was 3. I grew up in Southern New Jersey, but my mom was, I would say, had a robust interest in her own professional development and therefore the development of her students. So I trained with her, but I also had the opportunity to train with a number of different teachers in Philadelphia and New York City. So by the time I got into high school, I was going to New York on my own to take class. I went to college as a theater major for about a year, and I was very restless and moved to the city. So the first, I guess, 10 years of my career were performing. I had a theater company for a little while in the city, about 5 years, developing new plays, and then realized that sort of similarly to Frank in that where he started and then where he realized his affinity was, I think there was a point when I had my company that I recognized that I got just as much satisfaction from the administrative and producing side as I did as an actor. And at that point, I had an opportunity to go work with a woman who had a marketing firm. At the time, I did not think of myself in that way. She was the one that said, well, if you kept a theater company afloat in New York City for 5 years, you probably were doing something along the lines of what you'll do here. So that was my introduction to doing marketing for Broadway and off-Broadway shows. And that trajectory continued for a handful of years. I worked with Dodger Theatricals in the city for a while. I went to LA to be the marketing director at the Kodak Theater, now the Dolby Theater. I went back to New York and ran a Broadway marketing firm for a couple years, and then spent 9 years at the Guthrie as the external relations director. When we moved back east after both of our tenures at the Guthrie, I was hired as the inaugural executive director for a new project in the city called Little Island. It's a public park and performance space in the Hudson River off of West 14th Street. Spent 7 years there between the design and construction phase, launching it and operating it for a couple years. And now we're in the city of Poughkeepsie.
So there's so much in both of your backgrounds. I would love to dig into both of those, but unfortunately time won't let us. So we're going to have to pick a few parts. And I noticed, I'm going to start with the Guthrie. I heard was in both of your backgrounds. Is that where you met, or was there something that led you both to the Guthrie?
It is where we met. But Frank was there a long time before I got there. And you were part of a particular transition, and I was sort of the result of the transition.
Yeah, I was in the old building. I was in the old building for about 6 or 7 years, and then we transitioned into a new $125 million 3-theater complex that I spent about 5 years in the process. I call it the world's biggest do-over because literally we replicated the old building in the new building with obvious upgrades all the way around.
And a little bit bigger, I would say. I mean, the thrust stage itself was not, but the building was significantly more square feet than the original building.
Yeah, and as the institution got larger, I transitioned from a director of production to a senior manager. We didn't have a managing director, so the senior managers functioned as a team, and Trish was on that senior management team as well.
I joined right after the new building opened.
Okay.
So Joe Dowling, who is the artistic director and CEO through all of the years that Frank was referencing, structured a team. It was a little untraditional for regional theaters because he was the AD and the CEO, and he had a 4-person senior management team that Frank and I were both part of. But I was sort of part of a restructure that he did to deal with the fact that the organization was going through this kind of historic growth, both in opening a new facility, but also huge increase in budget, and as a result, needing to increase attendance and all those other things.
You mentioned Little Island, and I love that place.
Oh, thank you.
For those who have not seen it in New York, I mean, just seeing it from the outside, it's very interesting because of those, I don't know if you have a name for the way those pillars
the tulips
are. They're
at the
tulips,
top.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if you can describe that for our listeners. You'll do a much better job of the island itself and how it operates.
Yeah, it was a historic pier for many years. It was Pier 54, and it was just a long rectangular pier with a band shell at the end, and they did all kinds of concerts there, and it was destroyed in Hurricane Sandy. It was not in the best shape to begin with, and the hurricane sort of finished it off. And what happened was Hudson River Park, who run all of those public parks along the Hudson River, approached Barry Diller to be a lead donor in a capital project to sort of restore, renovate, and reimagine what Pier 54 was. And he circled back to them and said, I would like to be the sole donor, and I would like to drive what the creation of this project is. And he, in a process in collaboration with Hudson River Park, they identified Thomas Heatherwick as the architect. So the tulips that you're referring to, there are 132 of them that support the park. It's elevated above the Hudson River, and no two tulips are alike. They are all a series of petals, for lack of a better way to put it. So each petal was created individually and then assembled. And then they came 4 at a time floating down the Hudson River from a place just a little north of Albany called Fort Miller that actually constructed all of those tulips. So it was a huge collaboration between Heatherwick, the landscape architect named Signe Nielsen, Arup, who were our engineers, a gentleman named Fabian Yarborough, who was the architect of record, who really were the ones that figured out how to make this very cool design actually work and be stable and functional and all of those good things.
And Frank, during this time, were you at the shed?
Part of that time, yeah.
Because that's another interesting space. Can you describe? Because I don't know if a lot of people know about that yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, imagine a 4-story building with a shell on the outside that can pull away from the fixed building, creating a 125-foot cube. So 125 feet straight up, 125 feet wide, and 125 feet long, with some flying truss and various attributes to it. So it's a big old square that we did everything from concerts to, industrials, fashion shows. The attraction to that particular project for me was I was a theater guy and mostly had done theater, so it was an opportunity to branch out into visual art and also a much more musical side.
Yeah,
of
you guys
things.
did such a range of events.
Yeah.
Some outside folks, but some that were self-produced, and it's quite a lot of variety there.
Prior to that, I was working with Moises Kaufman's Tectonic Theater Project, doing a lot of, crazy stuff all around the country in Miami and Iowa and wherever he sent me.
So I also see that you both have a lot of experience advising colleges and universities, lecturing at them, and so forth.
For many years, I had a long association with North Carolina School of the Arts, and that came about. Basically, I reached out to them and said, with this new theater complex, I'm always looking for more staff. Could I come and meet some of your students? And they said, well, funny enough, we have a job fair every spring. So, I don't know, 12 years or so, I would just go down there every spring and interview students, and was able to, on several occasions, hire straight out of that particular program. That turned into other associations. I did a curriculum review for Yale School of Drama, some work with the University of Arizona, and also the University of Vermont. Just kind of things popped up that with connections that I had.
We'll get into the ETCA in just a bit, but I'm wondering just if these experiences kind of help also inform what you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure. Frank is an undergrad and a master's degree, and I'm a college dropout. So we've come into this business in very different ways.
Well, I would say you've got your doctorate in terms of experience, so don't cut yourself short.
Well, I think over the time that we've worked together, we've talked about the fact that not everybody learns the same way. People come into this business in a lot of different ways, but we are also still not the most accessible industry, right? We all know this, and everybody's working on it, but we're not as far along as we want to be or need to be. I had 3 different workforce programs at Little Island, and we started those in 2018, which was 3 years before the park opened. And a lot of that was driven by a couple things. One was a deep interest in young people participating in the creation and running of that park, and also to deepen our relationships with the neighborhood and the young people in the neighborhood. While I think we went into developing those programs with a pretty good idea of what young people might need and ways that they would want to work with us, I'll speak for myself, and that I learned a tremendous amount from them as well. Just sharing feedback about what they were learning in college, what they weren't getting, where they felt the gap in some practical experience that made starting a job feel sometimes overwhelming, like they weren't actually sure if what they had learned was as transferable to the real work. I've always had a passion for developing teams. Wherever I've worked, it's always been important to me that the people I'm working with have an opportunity to grow and develop. So professional development and mentorship really matters.
These are all, I don't mean to interrupt you, but these are all terms that people are learning about and use. But can we get to the nuts and bolts of how you did it? How did you go out? Like, what was the work that you had to do to
at Little Island? Yeah, it was a collaboration with a couple people, primarily a gentleman named Michael Wiggins, who was one of my first hires, and he was the head of community relations and education. And his first day, he said, "Where do you want me to start?" And I said, "Well, it's June, and I would really like to have a summer intern program. Do you think we can make that happen this year?"
That seemed, wow.
And he said, "Give me a couple weeks." So the conversation was, start small and do it well. Right. I think sometimes organizations, particularly arts organizations, get a little overwhelmed and think, well, if I can't have 20, I shouldn't do it. Right. We started with 2 for 6 weeks. And the criteria was pretty simple on our end. We wanted to make sure they had real things to do, right? Real learning opportunities, and also some curriculum that would support them beyond the tasks. So we started a financial literacy curriculum. We had them meet with various members of the staff to get a better understanding of what their jobs were, how they got there, what was their journey, what is their education. And the program evolved and grew. So we went from 2 for 6 weeks to 3 for 8 weeks, and et cetera. And then we expanded it into a fellowship program as we were leading into the opening. And then people were interviewing and actually and very specifically involved in different departments. But Michael and I and his team were very active collaborators in what the initial structure was, how that evolved, how to scale it. Eventually, we had an Usher Corps program where 16 young adults worked as ushers throughout for both of the performance spaces, but still had all of that other curriculum as well. It's part of what we talked about at Little Island, and it's part of what Frank and I talk about for ETCA, which is you have to leave the program, whatever the program is, with 2 toolkits. One are the hard skills to do the job, and the other are the soft skills so you can build a career. Because I think we're too often focused on getting people a first job, and we don't actually put them in a position to have that be the beginning of something as opposed to the beginning, middle, and end.
You are so right. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
I can speak from the perspective of somebody who started as an intern with a master's degree. Again,
at ART, right?
At ART,
Yeah.
that privilege piece again, I could work for $5.25 an hour and still.
It was really that?
It was $5.25 an hour, yeah.
I know it was a while ago, but that's still not a lot of money.
Well, and I didn't get it for the actual part of sitting next to the lighting designer. I got it for being an electrician, the few hours that I was actually an electrician. Mm-hmm. But I got there and was fortunate enough to be working with absolute world-class auteur directors. I'm sitting next to Andre Serban or Robert Wilson or Richard Foreman, and having my brain sort of exploded with the art that's happening on stage, but also realizing that master's education, highly specialized. I learned more about light bulbs than most people should know, that I found only useful about 30 years later. But I had to reinvent myself through the workforce. I literally had to think of, well, what has value? All this detailed information that I was, imparted in graduate school isn't necessarily what you need on the ground in real time as you're starting out your career. Great to have, but so then I sort of had to reinvent myself in that process. Shortly after 3 years in lighting, I had to reinvent myself again to become a production manager, sort of like, what do I like about what do I need to do, and what do I like about budgets and schedules and things that other people may not be as interested in. So that kind of exploration and discovery period in terms of what has value. What has value when you start out? What are we just had the good fortune to work with the students on Jazz in the Valley this past weekend. I've had 5 weeks with them, covering some of the basics, stagehand techniques and tools, and I was pleasantly surprised that all the things that we talk about in class are the things that they were required to do in the real world. So it's that kind of experience, whether whether it's from a MFA perspective or the School of Hard Knocks perspective, where what is value and how do you make yourself useful?
For a lot of our listeners, they don't maybe know that you're in a building that is very beloved by a lot of people in the community. Yeah. It's a venue that was built in 1912, and it started its long, rich history as a vaudeville venue in 1926. Yeah, the Duchess Theater, it was known as then, and then the latest iteration, it was known as the Chance. Just sidebar, in the 90s, I went there many times to see my favorite pop punk bands and rock bands, and it's got a special place in my heart too, so I understand it. Yeah. And I only bring that up because I'm sure as you're coming into this community, you probably hear a lot of stories about people and their connection with that building. Has that informed the way you're approaching doing work in this, space that people love?
You feel a certain level of responsibility to the space. To your point, it means so much to the community, and it has over 100 years of history and multiple chapters. And I think that's, we had an artist, Crystal Monet Hall, in there doing a concert a couple months ago, and she literally came in this space and she was like, "Oh, it's got vibes in here. Yeah, I can feel the history," So it's everything from somebody brand new to the space who can feel that history to folks like you, who it's a really beloved place with really intense memories. So I think we feel a sense of responsibility to the community from that standpoint to continue this legacy with this chapter.
Why don't you tell us the why you decided to start this program in the first place, and why you chose Poughkeepsie?
Sure. We decided to start the program after lots of conversation about sort of the lack of vocational training generally in this country now, right? Like when we were growing up, it felt like every high school also had a vocational program where some of the students went there for part of the week or part of the day, right? They were learning trades. And so we've had a number of conversations about that over the years, about feeling like as a result of pursuing everybody has to get a college degree, being concerned that we're leaving people behind, either from an access standpoint, financially, geographically, or an interest standpoint, right? Not everybody wants that kind of academic pursuit. They want other ways to learn. And then we started talking more specifically about it in our business, that there are a lot of our jobs that work very well in a vocational setting, but we just haven't been very intentional about it. I don't think we're particularly intentional in general as an industry about how are we building a pipeline of talent. We all know that COVID meant people retired early, they left the industry, they're not coming back. So there's a gap in our workforce, and we don't really have enough infrastructure to support how we're going to fill that gap. So we started getting more serious about, okay, if we did this, what jobs are we talking about? Why would we do those? We really focused on jobs that A, we knew would work in vocational training, and B, we knew had more demand than supply. So that's where on the technical side, we landed on stagehands, audio and video technicians. On the administrative side, we'll be training company management, communications, and fundraising.
Wow. So the other piece about that, as we were casting about how to take that impetus into an actual direction, a big piece of it was also the diversification of the workforce.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
My areas in particular are largely white spaces.
It's still mostly male.
A lot of male, that's true. Mm-hmm. So how would we do that? Where would we do that? We looked at one particular location that was good with a particular resource of a building that would have been great. But it was in a remote location that wasn't at all diverse. And then we started talking about housing and how would that work. And I suggested at one point that we look at Poughkeepsie. We had lived in Rhinebeck for 7 years.
I was going to ask, how did Poughkeepsie get on your radar?
Yeah, we were familiar from being in Rhinebeck. And when Frank referenced Poughkeepsie, I was like, you're right. Like one thing we knew was we didn't want to start it in the city. I could imagine a version of it in the city at some point, but I didn't think it was the right place to start. So I started researching on the heels of that suggestion, and we just got really lucky because I was investigating the city and what was cooking here right around the time that high developers bought the Chance. Mm-hmm. So there was all this press about it. I didn't know the space. Frank did. He had been at a concert there. But there were a few things they said in the press that really struck me. One was that they bought it to make sure it stayed a venue. They had also expressed some interest in another project and had mentioned arts and culture in that. And I was like, who are these guys? They seem interesting. So I emailed them and said, this is who I am. This is who my husband is. This is this idea we're exploring. I'm intrigued with the way that you seem to be investing in Poughkeepsie and the value you seem to place on arts and culture. We'd love to talk to you. And we were very fortunate that they responded and said, let's talk.
I think the amazing thing about that, too, if I can just interject for a second, the fact that you have all these connections in the city, both of you, and you know, including with schools and other groups and everything like that, seems like that would be the easy thing to do. And yet you're coming into a city where neither of you are established. And I think that takes a lot of courage and just it's amazing. And I'm so grateful that you are taking this chance on Poughkeepsie. Yeah.
Or we're just a little wacky. It could be that too. Well, I think Poughkeepsie is such a great location for a million different reasons. One, a diverse population. Two, Mayor Flowers had just been elected. We were very excited about her. We had the opportunity to meet her when we came up here to meet with Barry and Jay from High, and she was very supportive of
From the very beginning
of what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it. So knowing that we would have her support was really meaningful. It's also an amazingly central location. You know, if you train here and you want to work in the city, you can. If you train here and you want to work in Albany, you can. Right, if you train here and you want to be part of Hudson Valley Shakespeare, New York Stage and Film, PS21, Bardavon, UPAC, right?
Western Mass.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's such a great centralized place that it felt like that was another huge asset. And, you know, you have Dutchess Community College, you have Marist, you have Vassar. So there's also a culture of education, right? Learning. Yeah. And how could this sit in that ecosystem and thrive just as well as these other educational institutions? It just seemed like there were a lot of things at play that really looked like they would have genuine benefit to the industry, to the young adults here who may be looking for something that they hadn't even thought was a career before, and a way to build a career that allows you to still live here if you want to.
You choose what you're going to do. You choose Poughkeepsie. Now you have to come up with some sort of plan and how you're going to roll it out. I'm assuming it's phases because I know what you're doing now, and it's not everything you just mentioned. So can you just speak to that a little bit about what the plan is and how and what you're doing now? I know I got a special tour. Frank told us what's going on, and he's got the first class, and it's really, really encouraging to see it take off.
Well, let me back up just a little bit to sort of say that, you know, when we first met with the developers, they showed us several buildings. You know, frankly, their thought was that we would wait to use the theater when it was reconstituted and such.
And they did some renovations and such.
And we were like, no, we can use it how it works. And it's really important for us to keep the theater open and accessible. It's not open as often as we would like, but there is activity. And I'll talk to anybody to tell them that, yes, there will be a theater here. Yes, it will be called The Chance. I can't tell you exactly what the programming will be long term, but it will be here. It's not going away.
Part of this community.
So part of our attraction to the space was just the way we were thinking about the training, or specifically the technical training that I'll be responsible for, in that we're using the former loft space, which is a separate nightclub, an adjacent space, as a classroom. I've taken some pains to clean it up a little bit and to make it more of a classroom space. So we do hold classes in there, and I can say 5 weeks in that it works great as a classroom. But then we also take time to go out into the theater space. There are certain things and activities that you need that kind of space to train in. It also affords us the opportunity to do some productions from time to time. That balance from the very beginning, as we were thinking, as you were asking about, like, well, how did you come up with how you're going to do this, was somewhat informed by our reaction to the space. Was I really intend to use both these spaces for what they're good at. We have particular class times where I'll either show a video or we'll have a class lesson about a specific topic, and then we'll often either practice that skill or that learning in the classroom, or we'll take it down to the theater and actually apply it for those things right now.
And for our listeners, that's not just like 1 hour once a week. You want to explain
these
that?
are full days. We start at 9:15 in the morning and go till 4 in the afternoon.
3 days a week.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, it's a long day, but it's, building that muscle for future long days.
Well, it's a long day, but it's also a lot of repetition too. I mean, you know, we started from day one learning their knots and how to coil a audio cable, and we'll go back and revisit those skills so that they stay fresh. If you don't do them, you'll lose them.
Yeah.
So,
and the goal for these students?
The goal for these students is that when they matriculate, they will be qualified to be like an A2. They would know how to build a system, connect everything. They know all the different cables. They would make good choices about microphone choices to the extent they were given the responsibility to do that. They're going to get an introductory to audio networking capabilities. We're going to dip into video a bit with that networking as well, that technology. Also, we're talking about safety. Safety is a big component of being a professional in the realm. So we spend a fair amount of time on safety as well.
And so this is phase one, I'm assuming. What's the goal for phase two? Is there a certain threshold you're trying to reach before or is it a time thing? What is the plan?
I think there's a couple different things. One is to repeat the technical program one or two more times before we add the administrative track. So it's likely that 26 will be all technical training. Probably two more cohorts we'll get through in 26. And then 27 is when we'll roll out the administrative track. So it gives Frank time to continue to do the work, and us also, frankly, get more people in the field.
Right.
And then we'll add administration. And then at the halfway point of 26 is the first time that we'll run both programs simultaneously.
That's exciting.
My hope is that as we progress, we have more and more activity where there's hands-on and we're actually doing shows. That's the goal to do, and we've got a number of
increase the amount of programming that's happening simultaneous to the training.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you find your students? How do you attract them and convince them to come join this new program that doesn't have a history?
Yeah. Well, we've been out there talking to a lot of people this past year. There's some really great partners here, from the mayor's office to the community college to Community Matters 2. We work with Project More. We work very closely with the Chamber Foundation. So a lot of it is us talking to people and then those people talking to people. So we're starting, I think, to build a level of awareness. You know, as you might imagine, you come into a community, it's a brand new idea with people that you don't know, and a different education concept for jobs people may not realize are even jobs. So it takes time. It takes time to do the legwork and have enough conversations. But I think the good news is we've now established enough partnerships that when we roll out announcing that the next wave of applications are open, you know, each round gets a little bit easier because people are more familiar, and we'll have graduates.
Yeah.
So you can tell the story not just about what we think we should do and how we think it'll go, but the graduates themselves will be able to talk about what the experience was.
And I'm sure, going back to your connections and experience again, you probably can help. I mean, you can't hire them at places that you don't work at anymore, but I'm sure you can at least help get their resume through a door to be looked at the very least.
Yes. And, you know, the other piece of the curriculum, besides like the technical work Frank is doing, is some of the things we were talking about with Little Island, like financial literacy and business communication, mental health habits. They have a workshop every week in one of these different categories. And our goal is to ensure that they are employable at the end of this, but it's also part of our commitment is to ensure that they get that first opportunity. I'm thrilled that they worked Jazz in the Valley last week because they're already building their resume and they haven't even gotten through the first 2 months of the program. So we're looking for other opportunities like that so they can continue to work during their training, and then they'll be even better equipped to be employed when they finish.
Great. Is there anything else we should know about the program before I get to my next series of questions?
I encourage people, if they're even a little bit curious, just go to the website and check it out and send an email if you want to talk. You know, I've talked to so many young people in this community since we started. Frank has too. Some of it just requires conversation. But if you have, you know, it's kind of how you started with us. What was your spark? The people that are in the program right now have all come to it from completely different journeys, right? But the spark hit at some point. So if you've ever been at a concert and you saw somebody working the board and you're like, hey, what is that person doing? That looks kind of cool. You know, it can be that simple. And then if you explore the site, you talk to one of us, you can start to piece together, oh, this thing that I really dig, I might actually be able to learn more and make a living. I just encourage people to give themselves room to consider.
We use our 3 basic core values as a way to
Identify,
talk about and identify people who are interested or might be interested in the program.
Yeah, our values are curiosity, collaboration, and problem solving. And I often say to young people, if those 3 words ignite you, if you're like, oh, I love that, I identify as curious, I love solving problems, I like being part of a team. That's huge. Like
That's
the way
really
you
huge,
think,
yeah.
the way you like to engage with the world tells me so much more than what you've done before. Mm-hmm. Because if you have an appetite for those 3 things, Frank can teach you the rest.
That's amazing. I love that. So we're just about out of time, but I always like to take people back in a time machine that we own. We're going to take you back to one moment in your timeline where you can either say something to yourself that you needed to hear at that time, or just give yourself some kind of encouragement. Trish, we'll start with you. You mentioned, you had the difficult decision to drop out of college. At that moment, I can only imagine, what that was like for you. What would you need to hear from yourself?
Well, when I made that decision, as you might imagine, it wasn't the most popular decision with certain members of my family.
Of course.
I think what I would say is trust yourself. Mm-hmm. I couldn't necessarily articulate properly probably why I wanted to do what I wanted to do, why I didn't want to go back to school and I just wanted to move to the city and get on with it. But there was some voice inside me that just knew, because as a teenager, I was able to go to New York City on my own. I knew I belonged there. I felt like I was part of that city in a way that I couldn't really put language to. And when I went away to school, it wasn't that I wasn't getting any value, but there was something inside me that just felt like this isn't my place. Mm-hmm. I know where my place is, and that's where I want to be. So I think for young people, sometimes we flood them so much with what you should do's.
Yes.
Well, you have to's or you won't have, and all of these different things that are really overwhelming when you're 18, 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
Let alone 15 or 16.
And it's so loud. It's sometimes
so
hard
noisy.
to even know that you have a gut to be able to trust your gut.
That's right.
Yeah. It's so many noises.
Yeah. So I think I would say, like, if that small voice is telling you something and yourself, just trust it and go for it, right? You can always change your mind. Like, I moved to New York at 19. If I, in a couple years, turned to my parents and said, I think I made a mistake here, I think I need to go back to college, they would have supported that, and I could have come to terms with that. But at that time, it was what I knew I needed to do, and it worked. I will say, when you make that choice, you just have to understand you do not have the infrastructure of how you mature in the way that you do in college, right? So I had to learn that my relationships and my reputation were what I had because I didn't have a piece of paper. So the intentionality about how you build relationships that are positive and how you create your own professional reputation when you can't walk in the door and show your degree, it's the trade-off. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to make the choice, you just have to know that work is going to have to be more self-driven.
Frank, I'm going to take you back to a similar point in your life. You talked about 3 years into your lighting career, you had to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And that must have been another confusing time in figuring out things. Am I making the right choice? What would you tell yourself?
I had planned so many years being a lighting designer that when I decided not to be, it was somewhat of a crisis where it's like, well, if I'm not that thing that I spent years studying, what am I? What am I? The piece of advice that I would have given to myself is that whatever experience you've been through, nothing's wasted. And what I meant by that is that I gave up being a designer. I gave up being an artist. About almost 14 years into being a production manager at the Guthrie, a project came across my desk that had a tiny budget, little teeny tiny budget. And I was like, I can't figure out I guess I'll have to design lights for it. That's the only way we're going to make this budget work so I had to tell the director, I said, you got me for a lighting designer. And
did they know you had the background in that?
Yeah. I mean, okay. I had,
but they also knew you hadn't done it in a long time.
Yes, that's true. That's true. 20 years.
Oh.
So it turned out to be a director who's now the artistic director at the Alley Theater in Houston. So I did that show, and then the next year he he came back and he said, well, now I want you to do it again, So I did a couple of shows up in our small space. And then my artistic director saw it and said, why aren't you designing for us? Long and short of it is I then was given the opportunity 20 years later to design a dozen shows for the Guthrie Theater. And I think I acquitted myself fairly well because I kept getting asked to do more and more. So between that and when we were building our new building, I had done a detour in college. My college wasn't straightforward. I got through it, but I took a semester off to build hydraulic motors in a factory.
Wow.
A dead-end job, factory job, that while I just sorted myself from what I wanted to do with my life. Fast forward 30 some odd years, and we're building this gorgeous three theater complex, and it had a hydraulic system in it that was plumbed wrong. And my stint in the hydraulics business proved to be useful. So it just goes to speak to what I would say to my younger self is just keep in mind nothing's wasted.
100%.
Absolutely nothing's wasted.
You use it at some point, right?
Always, because
Yeah.
I think we all go through that.
Totally.
I actually have a missed opportunity. When I was in high school, foreign language was required, and I did not flourish. I have a negative aptitude for foreign language.
Same.
And in college, I was required to take a semester and a half of it. And I kept saying, what do I need Spanish for? I'm going to be a lighting designer. So fast forward, and I'm working at ART in the lighting department, and they're going on tour. Where are they going? Madrid. And who has to go by themselves? Me. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi in the Madrid airport saying, am I gonna fake it? Am I gonna try, am I gonna be the ugly American, not speaking anything and sorry, no hablo, no hablo español? Or am I gonna try, and I chickened out. But believe me, at that point in time, I was looking back at when I said, I had this opportunity to learn foreign language, and I chose not to take advantage of that opportunity.
Right.
And it cost me.
Thinking about today's young new professional just entering the world, whatever the role they're pursuing in the industry, is there any kind of advice or some kind of wisdom that you've had to learn the hard way that maybe you think we didn't touch on that they should know about?
Well, so much of it for me is take advantage of the opportunities that are before you, and you don't know what that might be. So if you have an opportunity, and even if it's an opportunity you don't have the option to get out of, just wring as much learning out of it as you can, because you never know when something might prove to be useful. And you're going to have to do it anyway, so you might as well really try and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I think mine is similar in nature, which is just say yes. I think kind of like what we were talking about before, where it's just so noisy for young people these days. You get so flooded that it paralyzes you. And it can feel risky and vulnerable to say yes to something that you may not really be familiar with. And you don't want to be embarrassed or exposed or whatever the case. But I have found that even in my toughest work situations, kind of like everything else we've been talking about, there's been value in it. The times that I've been like, uh-oh, what did I get myself into? Have still been growth opportunities. Or you meet somebody in that situation that ends up being one of your closest colleagues or whatever the case is. So, say yes.
I always ask this as the last question because the world sometimes can be a little stressful and upsetting, and a lot of people are feeling that right now. So I like to end on a hopeful message or a positive note. And that question is, and I'd like both of you to answer, what do you like most about working in the arts industry today?
Every day is different. Always surrounded by creative people. Art is always the answer. So being a part of that is it's extraordinary.
Yeah, going back to the basics, going back to the elemental part of the industry, for me, working with young people, there's so much hope for these young minds that are anxious and interested. It's great.
To make their mark, to contribute. Yeah. To be part of a community in an authentic way, right? We use that word so much, but it's true.
It is true.
In what we all do.
Well, thank you both for taking time to sit with me, Trish and Frank. It's been a pleasure getting to know you more.
You too. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today.
My favorite thing about this interview, in addition to learning about the structure of the island and the tulips and how all of that happened, because that was incredible.
Yeah, a lot of Googling happened. That was amazing.
Yeah. Yes.
See, I've driven by it enough times in New York that I knew exactly what she was talking about. It's fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like the continuing sentiment of every bit of experience matters. You know, his story about hydraulics. I mean, for me, it was whenever I dropped out of college, I was painting cars and building houses. And in my mural work, the painting cars has come back, and different aspects of building houses has applied itself to building management here on a regular basis and managing contractors. And so every ounce of experience you have in the field, outside of the field matters. And it is just such a point that I can never not drive that home.
And that is a recurring theme I think we've heard through multiple interviews that we've done on the show, but this put it in such clear terms with such wonderful examples. I was so glad to meet Trish and Frank and to hear about their experiences in their lives. I also just walked away from listening to this interview just so grateful for those in our industry who are so brave and who are so creative and are so willing to take a risk, whether that is on the administrative side or it's on the artistic side. We have been talking about this pipeline issue and talent issue, training issue for a really long time, and they are actually doing something about it, right? They are taking a risk of starting this program of their own accord and thinking through the logistics and the challenges and what do students really need and want. And I think that's something that's so inspiring to me is just, they saw a need, they came up with a solution, and they're making it happen. Not everyone is brave enough or willing to do that. So I really commend them for taking the leap and making this a reality for students who need the training.
Well, and the way that they're talking too about the program that they're doing, like the idea of starting from like a vocational education model makes so much sense. And the way that they chose which programs they're going to offer also just really makes sense in that model of like, you can learn about it in a classroom. You can, I mean, having that theater right there, completely accessible, amazing, right? You can go and practice it and have space to screw up and, do it again and again and again. And then, all of these contacts they have, who's doing a show or a job and doesn't like need another hand at the last minute, right? Like they might not be ready to like jump in at the highest level, but like you can wrap cables for anybody once you know how to wrap cables, and do all that kind of stuff. And that vocational type model is really great, especially for like a fast track. A 10-month program is not a huge commitment. And not every job needs to be a 4-year college degree. Like that's super great for people that enter into that same job that want that 4-year structure. But like it is really smart to have an alternative because that's just not the right path for everyone for the reasons they mentioned and more. And
they're not just teaching people to push things on and off trucks. Like they're really teaching them, like you said, to be like an A2 and have quality income type of jobs. And I think it's commendable. I just wish I had more time to speak with each of them individually because their backgrounds are so deep and they've done so many things, and just as an example, like the marketing work that Trish did, not having a marketing background, but working with doing marketing for Broadway shows. I mean, it's incredible the things that they've done. And I can't wait until 2 years from now when they launch the admin part of their program. And I hope to talk to Trish again about that to learn more about that side of it. But I really appreciated what Frank had to say about what they're doing now and how they're really, as Katie alluded to, first of all, they chose Poughkeepsie, not having any connections or anything there, which I also agree. I would use the word brave. I mean, to start somewhere where you don't have any connections with anybody and to build a program as robust as this, and the fact that they're so giving, they're giving back to the industry, and they're using not only their expertise, but all of their connections to make sure these students succeed, not only to learn the things, but then actually have a job when they're done, like to find work when they're done. So it's a great pipeline, as Katie mentioned, and I'm really excited that it's in our backyard.
Well, and I will say the foundation that I work for right now full time, in addition to my consulting work, is deeply invested in career and college access. And we host a career and college access network program through the foundation. And about 2 weeks ago, I sat in a 2.5-hour session where higher education and career and college access leaders came in and talked to a bunch of people about the work that they're doing doing and what Trish and Frank are doing right now is exactly what higher education institutions are looking for and what students are looking for. It matches what students need to a T. So what I heard in that room was students are looking for shorter programs that cost less money, that are flexible, and that really give them like they said, both the hard skills, the technical skills, and the soft skills. And a lot of students, particularly that are maybe adult students that are going back, switching careers, or have other responsibilities, childcare, parent care, whatever it is, they are looking for that sort of like very intensive and short-term training so then they can launch from there. So they've clearly done their research and know what students are looking for, and are meeting that need. And I'm so excited to see this grow. And I can't wait for it to expand across the country because it is sort of geographically located. I was really happy that they mentioned housing and they were thinking through sort of like the barriers to access that could stand in the way of a student taking advantage of this. So I'm excited to see this model grow and us to think of the technical side of our field and the administrative side of our field as vocational training. Like that really is going to open up the doors to so many individuals who want to pursue this, but just feel like they can't get over the hump.
I also resonated a lot with what we talked about when they were saying, trust your gut and, not to be afraid to reinvent yourself. And, there's been, I think back to my own life, to multiple times where I've had opportunities present itself, but I might have been too afraid. There might have been too much noise, or too much pressure to stay on the track I was when I knew my gut was telling me the right thing would be to make the change. And so not that I have regrets in life, but it's, it is something that it's hard to do when you're in that moment. And every time I have trusted my gut, and I think that was their point, is your gut knows what you want to do. And, if you just listen to your gut, you're going to end up being happier and doing the things and succeeding because you're doing the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah. And I really think too, Bryan, that underscores the thought that like a career isn't a straight line.
Right,
I think our generation maybe was like sold the like, you graduate from high school, you go to college, you get the job, then you get the other job, and then you're at the top of the ladder. And that's just not realistic. It's not, the way that the world is kind of structured to work, and it shouldn't be the norm. And it shouldn't be such like almost like an outcast to make that choice, right? Because you're getting more experience, be bettering yourself by not taking that super direct line, whether by choice or by circumstance.
I mean, look at us. We're all doing different things at the same time. We've got this podcast, we've got our full-time jobs. Josh has his murals. Katie has her consulting business. We all have different things going on. And so it's a different world. Yeah. I think there's still ladders out there in certain tracks,
especially in technical theater.
And you guys didn't bring this up, but I looked on their website, Bryan. The business model is nonprofit, and they're going to be accepting donations to help support operations. And then 2, the program is valued at $3,500. Those 3 days a week for 10 months. The tuition value is $3,500, but it's a sliding scale tuition fee. So they will have discussions with each individual student about their financial capability and adjust tuition accordingly. That is wild to me. Like so cool, but also wild. Who in the world is doing that?
And that's part of why they picked Poughkeepsie, because there's such a need there. There's so much financial disparity in Poughkeepsie, and they're trying to create pipelines for upward mobility for people who don't have other opportunities in their neighborhood. And again, creating valuable jobs where they can make a real living doing something that they can enjoy doing, and something that they learn skills that are transferable to other things too.
Yes.
It's not only like just for theater jobs. All right, I want to thank Trish Santini and Frank Butler for sitting down with me and having this awesome chat. And I can't wait to follow what they're doing in the neighborhood. And hopefully I'll get them back on to talk a little bit more when they start adding the other programs. But that's it for now. So we hope you come back next week for our next episode of There's No Business Like.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Bryan Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it. Don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
And Kevin's not with us today because he's a loser.
Yeah.
So Kevin's not with us today, and why isn't he with us today? He's got
'Cause he's a
visitors or
bitch.
something. Like, I don't want to say he's a loser. I want to re-record that.
His family's in Florida for the football game.
His sister and her family are in Florida for the football game, and they're playing Alabama, so it's going to be crazy.
Oh, Danielle, did you like the closet octopus image the AI created?
I will say, though, my closet octopus is a lot more chaotic. I think that AI was gentle.
And there were some more extreme ones, but
Yeah, but that one was the cutest with the headphones and the microphone, and it captured you in your purple tie-dye shirt.
The thing is, we talk about octopus, but we don't. I don't think we've ever talked about it on air about why she's called the closet octopus, because she had the
And
light
it's
sensor.
like, I probably should just go back in there.
I feel like at some point early on, it's in an outtake somewhere, but I'd have to like go back and really search.
Danielle, did you see the really dark, imposing image that is closet octopus?
Screen
You
share.
can share
so
screen.
You can see it.
No.
And there were Brian also made pictures of us as babies with headphones on.
Yes, he
Which is
did.
very cute.
And monkeys. He made us
And
monkeys too.
monkeys.
Yeah, that one is very imposing. And why does it have two microphones?
Yeah.
I guess it's an octopus.
AI.
I was making one. And in
Oh,
the
nice.
hand where it's holding the microphone, it has fingers.
That is sort of very scary. The one I shared was the best.
Well, and I like the one where it put us as 3 or 4 year olds, and it turned one of us into a girl. One of
Yes,
the guys
it
into
did.
a girl.
That one of us as children is terrifying. Oh, actually, the monkey is way scarier. Yeah, I don't like that.
I think they're cute. I thought the monkeys were cute. I see the one you're talking about, the octopus. It's like the angry octopus with two microphones. Yeah.
He's very angry.
In this
Yeah.
fifth one of the baby,
They're
the one
cute.
baby is significantly younger than the other ones. At least these other babies are 10 months old, and they look like they're sitting on their
Yes.
own. This baby in the back is definitely being propped up by a pillow and is at most 3 months old. And I don't think has a correct foot.
Yeah, the foot looks weird.
There's
I
a
noticed that
lot.
too.
That other baby has 7 fingers. Yeah, there's a lot of really awful
1,
fingers and
2,
toes
3,
in this picture.
Yes.
Toes, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bad. My second favorite octopus was this one.
it is real cute.
Yeah, I like the
That's
orange
very
octopus
cute.
too.
Yeah.
No
that's very cute.
microphone, but it's a cute one.
I know. Except what are these pillows? What are these things in the closet? And also, do you see this hanger to the left? There's a
Yeah.
hanger and then 3
Both
shirts.
hangers. All the hangers are they're broken hangers.
It's very
And
silly.
nothing is hanging on a hanger.
No. Yeah.
It's AI. What do you expect?
Oh, I know.
Trash.
It can't take our jobs yet because it makes things like that.
But they'll fix that. They will fix that.
I know they will.
Oh, do you want to ask us what punk pop shows we saw in the early 2000s?
Did you see pop punk shows in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I'm trying to think Hello Goodbye and somebody
Oh, okay.
who else was around that time? Because you mentioned that and you didn't tell us what you saw.
Yeah, I was. Well, you probably wouldn't know them. They were all local or regional bands. My favorite band was called Flatus. They were out of New Jersey. Since I got nostalgic about music I listened to, we can talk about oldies music like Backstreet Boys or I don't know, other ones in that era. That is on the oldies channel now, by the way. I saw people complaining about it.
No.
F off.
Yeah, I
It's
saw
not
it was
that old.
millennials. I'm a millennial, and I'm pissed that my music is in the oldies channel now. Backstreet Boys is not oldies.
They're playing freaking the Dome in Las Vegas. Come on.
So are other
I-
oldies
I know.
bands.
I know.
People that we would consider oldies.